the Sportsline Podcast is all pumped up, and we certainly appreciate you checking us out on the CHCH and Parrot Media platform. I'm Bubba O'Neill. Well, if you haven't noticed, Southern Ontario and Golden Horseshoe in particular, it's a hotbed for outstanding athletes, coaches, executives, media members, and teams like the Hamilton Tiger Cats, who are on their best heater since 2019. Today, folks, we're talking about the Canadian Football League. Well, this native of Winnipeg, Manitoba is the perfect example of a Canadian football player who lived out a dream. From his start with the North Winnipeg Nomads to the University of Manitoba, drafted by the Tiger Cats and capped with a decade-long career in the CFL. Polish it all off with winning a Vanier and Grey Cup. Eddie Steele will always say that his journey of playing Canadian ball was a big-time success. Now retired, Steele is talking CFL on Sports 1440 in Edmonton and on the Elks 101 podcast. Let's bring in the big fella. Eddie, always great to have you on our Sportsline podcast, and it's great to see you.
Good to be with you, Bubba. I love chatting with you, man. It's been a long time, but here we are. It's the week of the Elks and the Ticats, so we meet again, Bubba.
Yes, we do. Hey, before we get into any of that and what's going on in the league right now, kind of want to talk to you about something about you, yourself, and the fact that things resonate with me sometimes. And I had Mike Morreale here, a guy that you know very, very well, talking about his transition from playing football your whole life to the rest of your life. And, he's, before becoming the CEBL commissioner, he had a couple of kicks of the can and selling airplanes and all kinds of different things. What was that transition like for you?
That's a really good question, and I'm actually asked that quite often. That question paired along with, do you miss football? And to answer the second question, do I miss football? I don't miss the game of football at all, Bubba. I don't miss the physicality, the pounding, eating double teams for a living. What I miss is the fellas, the locker room, the guys, the camaraderie. And that's why you see so many players, when they do retire and transition, they go into career fields such as policing and the firefighting department, because those are very team-like atmospheres. So it's easier for guys to stay involved in that team atmosphere. So for me, I'm complete opposite, actually. I'm alone. I'm a lone wolf. I'm in sales myself for a chemical maintenance company. So I deal with all types of big facilities, rec centers, nursing homes, arenas, and I sell different maintenance chemicals for kind of the guts of the building. Boilers, the boiler system, the grease traps, drain maintenance, some HVAC type stuff. So I do a lot of that. And then, of course, I'm on the radio a couple of times a week. Very fortunate to have that opportunity. And as well, I started up a podcast myself called The Elks Nation. And it's just breaking down CFL content, the Double E content out here in the city, and just providing an opportunity for the younger generations to tap in and get some content the way that they absorb it, the short clips and the quick little video hits. And we're just really trying to tap into that, because we always constantly hear, Bubba, that the CFL is, the fan base is aging and that we're losing fans by the day, and that we need to get this younger generation on board. So that's a little bit of the goal in terms of what I'm trying to do with some of the media work out here.
I've always found you extremely personable, very honest as a broadcaster. I think it got you fired once when talking about the Elks. But honestly, what was that like for you? Was this a natural thing for you to talk on media and participate in media?
You know what, Bubba? I always, whenever growing up watching football games, I always would say things that happened in the course of the game right before the announcers would. And I did have a dream, and I still do have a little bit of a pipe dream to be a color analyst. I think that, humbly speaking, it would be something that I'm really good at, just seeing the game and giving the quick Coles notes of what happened play to play. I think that is something that I'm pretty passionate about. And, my father, he always prepared me. You have to be ready for the transition in football. Football, you can't play forever. There's only one Tom Brady who's ever played into his 40s. Other than that, we all have a shelf life. And he harped on me almost to the point where it's like he wanted me to be done playing so I could start this next career, because a lot of guys, they struggle with that transition. So my pops, I give him all the credit in the world for being a hard ass, so to speak, Bubba, in terms of just not letting my ego get too big, helping me realize that football is only football and there's still more to life after. And in terms of where I get the speaking ability, I would say just watching my dad as well. He's a salesman. And you got to talk to people. Life is all about relationships, but you got to do it honestly as well. There's a lot of horror stories about sales guys, and they're snaky and greasy, and that's not the way you go about life. So you just treat people true, you be honest, and you speak humbly and carry yourself in a professional manner. And that's how I was raised.
All right, I probably left a lot of people hanging. Can you just give the quick Coles notes on what happened on the Edmonton broadcast?
Yeah, so at that point in time, the team was struggling. It was right around the COVID year. They had done the name change unceremoniously. They fired Dwayne Mandrusiak, who had been the equipment manager for 49 years. I hadn't been that far removed. I retired 2 years before, so I knew a lot of guys in the locker room, still had some good, tight relationships. And the GM at that point in time, I have no issue naming him Brock Sunderland. He was just operating in an unprofessional manner, be it within guys in the locker room, how the organization was handling different situations. And all I did was essentially pointed the arrow at the captain of the ship, which is the GM, who is Brock Sunderland. And I said, the ship is going where he's steering it. And I laid out a solid, factual list of 5 different instances where, as a GM, I truly thought that he was failing the organization. And honestly, Bubba, from what I was told from behind the closed doors, I think that it would have gotten swept over and it wouldn't have been a big deal. And I probably would have just had a talking to. But Brock Sunderland really got insulted. And I think that he took it very personally, what I said. And he was the one that actually went to the broadcast to Ched and wanted to have me removed. So he was kind of a cancerous person in terms of how he was operating within the organization. And I don't think that is far-fetched to say, and you don't have to ask too many people to hear the same answers.
Well, you know, the good GMs in the league, or in fact in sports, they take it upon themselves and they absorb the criticism and don't take it personally. So I'm glad you did what you did. Unfortunate the end result, but at the end of the day, you got to say it how it is. Now, saying it as it is here, before we get into anything too deep about what's going on with the Elks right now, I got to go back a couple of weeks here. And of course, we're a little sensitive here close to Niagara Falls. Trey Ford certainly got all kinds of, I think, a lot of hype, and there's expectation. We saw him, and I'm kind of particular. I saw him play his university career, doing some games on McMaster Radio as well, too, and thought this guy was going to be a great CFL quarterback. What's happened there? Why has Trey Ford been replaced?
It's such an interesting situation, the quarterback position here in Edmonton over the past 5 years. I don't think I've seen anything really like this within pro football. And if you look at different organizations in the landscape, the merry-go-round at the quarterback position, Trey Ford was a first-round draft pick. And, you know, he was chosen under the Chris Jones regime. I don't think initially they handled it totally well, but he did get his reps, and Trey Ford has played in a lot of games. There is still, and we have seen really good progress throughout this season. You can see Trey in previous games really focusing on trying to be a passing quarterback, which I really believe is key and ideal for him. We all know he's got the legs and he can pull those out at any moment. But the CFL and football in general, you need to be a competent passing quarterback and be able to hit your reads and get it out on time. And he had struggled with that. Now, we look at the Ottawa game 3 or 4 weeks ago. Trey Ford went 15 of 17, 210 yards, perfect passer rating. And I truly thought that he had finally overcome some of these developmental hindrances, you might say, in terms of the happy feet in the pocket, going through his progressions on time. But then we see the game that unfolded here recently where it just fell off a cliff for him. And it's very interesting.
The game against, is that the game against BC?
The BC game.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Where he completed 4 passes total, 35 yards. And it was very interesting, just the coaching staff, again, the decisions, Bubba, because here we are going back to the Ottawa game. Trey Ford is 9 of 9 and they decide to rotate Cody Fajardo in just to get him some series, which make no sense. Never in my life, if Michael Riley, our starting quarterback when I won a Grey Cup, if he was 9 of 9, I can damn sure believe that they're not going to put in the backup quarterback just to get him some reps. It made no sense. And then in the BC game, when Trey Ford was struggling mightily, you hold off until 3 minutes left, essentially, to put Cody Fajardo in when the offense hadn't generated anything all game. So it was kind of bizarro world the way they were making the decisions, because it was opposite of really how it should be. Now, Cody Fajardo, he had a really good showing against Saskatchewan. I don't think the team can go back to Trey. With Trey, I don't think the book is over on him, Bubba. There is so many good things to his game, and you can see, which makes me very encouraged, is the kid is trying to develop and to be better. He is not just stuck in his ways. You can see him forcing himself to become a passing quarterback. Now, it all has to come together, and right now, the team doesn't have the affordability to continue to lose games to try and develop a quarterback. And that's kind of one of the things I've been saying since Trey Ford's gotten here. How many head coaches are willing to take losses and put their job on the line in order to develop a quarterback in pro football? It's not something that should have to happen.
So we just saw some visuals of Cody Fajardo there in that game against the Elks that dropped them to, I guess, 1-5 if we look at the CFL standings. You did make a comment in the sense that you can't go back to Trey. Fajardo, it was interesting to me. He looked good bringing back the team back late in the game against the Riders. But how do you get sacked 8 times? 8?
8. It's crazy. A couple of those were on Cody Fajardo for sure. Most of that, though, we know the O-line, they got dominated. Like, that was an embarrassing game for a couple of players on that offensive line. And I can promise you it's going to be an embarrassing week in film, as it should be when you get your butt whooped that bad, play after play. Now, I'll say this, Bubba. The past 2 games, the Edmonton Elks, they have 2 very good running backs in Javon Leake and Justin Rankin. The past 2 games combined over a course of 2 games, they have 10 total rush attempts. In 2 games, both of those, 10 total. So that is an absolute indictment on the offensive coordinator. Even if the run is not, you're not going to go and bust off 10-yarders every run, but you have to stick with the run game to a degree. You can't, over the course of 2 football games, have 10 rushing attempts. That's not going to cut it. And all that is giving the defensive line a green light to tee off on the quarterback, because they know that they're not going to have any run responsibilities. And I don't know what the issue was. It's mind-blowing for me to think about and say out loud, Bubba, but over 2 games, 10 total rushing attempts. That would be a reason you had 8 sacks. I can guarantee you that.
There's no doubt about that. That kind of balance just doesn't seem to work. And it's funny because I hear some outlets, kind of just raving about Jordan Maximic and his offensive game plan. And obviously it seemed to work in the first go-around with Nathan Rourke out in BC. But, I mean, at some times I feel like you have to sort of take your offense and sort of mold it to whoever the athlete is playing at quarterback or running back or whatever the case is. All right, let's look at the Ticats here. You and I have had some fun over the years, and going back to a CFL This Week podcast that we did for the Ticats, and I do remember a time, and I'm not doing this to be... I think you thought
do me like that, huh, Bubba?
I can't treat you. I don't want to treat you bad like that. But I think you said something about the Bo. Bo was done. It's over. Like he's shot. I think that was the word. Bo is shot. Is Bo still shot?
Bubba, I'm right here. I'll eat it all. I'll eat my words, man. Holy smokes! Color me shocked. I was on the Rod Peterson show earlier in the week as well, and similar deal. Both of us agreed. I never thought Bo would have this type of resurgence coming off of the injury that he had with his shoulder. Even last year, he finished this season really strong. But at that point in time, when I said what I said, he was kind of flailing in the wind, throwing a ton of interceptions. But here we are. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, he led the league last year in passing, Bubba. He's well on his way to do it this year again. And he is not slowing down. And what I really like out of his game, going back to the game against BC, I know it was a phenomenal comeback, but he is just so calm and poised back there. And you can see there is a utter confidence that oozes from him. He hits his drop back in his passing. That back foot hits the ground, and the ball is delivered out quick and on time to the right receiver. And it doesn't hurt, Bubba, when you have a guy like Kenny Lawler. Didn't have a huge game last week, but he is making play after play for Bo. So that just gives him confidence.
What are you seeing with Lawler? Like, this is... I mean, and it's funny because BC, and they said it all week, for 4 straight days, we have to stop Kenny Lawler. Well, how did that work out? 2 receptions, 29 yards, but he was a decoy. But otherwise, for every other game, he's been unbelievable.
He's unbelievable. He's such a unique receiver in the sense. He's not a big dude. He's not a receiver that's out there going to be a big guy blocking in the run game. But I'll tell you what, that wingspan he has, and on those 50-50 balls where it's me going to get it or the DB going to get it, he's so good at going and snagging it and making these electrifying catches. 8 touchdowns on the year already. And I mean, he's on pace to have a heck of a big season. And Bo Levi, he's on pace for well over 5,000 again, which is just remarkable.
What do you think about the upcoming matchup Saturday afternoon in E-Town, Commonwealth Stadium? Ticats and Elks, what do you see in this contest?
Well, the Ticats are coming here rolling 5 straight, and they got to be feeling good about themselves because when they started 0-2, all of that chatter was starting to become really loud already. But here we are. They're one of the best teams in the CFL. With the momentum is so heavy with that team, you can feel it. You can truly feel it. It's going to be a lot of hard work, especially for this Elks defense, who has not been the strength of the team this year. They had a good game holding Saskatchewan to 21 points, but up until that point throughout the year, they've been averaging 34 points against. Every quarterback they've seen until this past game has thrown for over 330 yards against them. Their run game, they have not been good in stopping the run. So Bo Levi, he's primed for a field day out here if this defense doesn't come correct. What I need to see personally out of this defense here in Edmonton is just some physicality, to be honest, Bubba. They made some changes last week against Saskatchewan, and you saw some of these defensive backs be willing to at least go and try and make a tackle. If you can carry some of that effort over, because that's simply just an effort thing. It's an attitude thing. It's not schematics or anything. It's about the heart and the will to want to get another man down. And we haven't seen a ton of the heart and that will from the Edmonton secondary. That's going to be huge. I think that the onus is going to be on them this week. Of course, defensive line has to try and get pressure to slow down Bo, but you're going to have to cover, and you can't let Kenny Lawler go off for a game where he gets 5 catches for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns.
You know, I'll have to ask you this because you're in the market and I'm not. You know, I'm an old man and forever it was Edmonton, the city of champions. What's the mood right now for, you know, CFL football and the Elks in particular, obviously, in the city of Edmonton?
There's an apathy. There's no denying it. I'm trying my best to be an optimist and to hype the team up as much as I can to a degree, truthfully. You know, you can't be out here BSing people because people see it. But, Bubba, there's just been so much losing. It all about, to me, I'm not a president or CEO of anything, but to me, it's very simple. I know there's a lot of things that go on behind closed doors in terms of dealing with tickets and dealing with scheme and schematics and all that within an organization. But on the football field, you got to win games. And they haven't been winning games over the past 5 years. So I get why people don't want to go, along with the name change I referred to earlier that really soured a lot of people, just the way they went about it. The Elk has done nothing but lose in the city since they become the Elk. Like, people don't connect to it. There is no denying that people don't identify to it because it's been nothing but losing. So when we talk City of Champions, and I was a champion, it's funny, they took down the billboard, the City of Champions in 2015, and then we go and we win the Grey Cup that year. So I can identify as a champion. This Elk and this losing, I don't know what it's about, man. And I know a lot of people, some people really like the logo and stuff, but man, it's hard to get behind this type of product right now. You win games, people will come back. That's plain and simple to me. I've never seen a Grey Cup champion or someone playing in a Super Bowl who has a half-empty stadium. People will pay to see winners. They just got to get on that train.
I'm glad you brought this up, and you actually I got to go here. Elks, the name change, which happened real quick. And I continue to talk to former players that played for the Eskimos and are bothered by the name change. I have talked to many Indigenous people. I've never met an Eskimo. I'm sorry. Like, I don't know how to phrase it properly. But I didn't feel like there was a lot of, hey, you need to change that name. It offends us. Can you take me down that road of what happened? And if, I gotta be honest, was the name change necessary?
I'm really glad you're giving me this platform and opportunity, Bubba, and it gives me chills to talk about, actually. So I feel like I am very credible to speak on this topic, not because I played for the team, because I put on camps on different reserves and different First Nations communities. I speak to the First Nation, the Native people. And you know what, Bubba? I'll go so far as to say I've been up in the Arctic. 2021, I put on a week-long football camp up in Cambridge Bay with the true Inuit, the true Eskimo people. And I can say I've done more in terms of having conversation and building relationships with those groups of people than I'm sure many of the corporate people who had a decision in changing the name. And you know what the consensus is? People are proud, Bubba. People were proud to be represented, to have their name on the big stage, and to have a culture represented. Now, when it comes to the name Eskimo, and the term Eskimo, I should say, what it means is raw meat eater. And you could take that two ways, Bubba. One could be it's perceived as kind of poor, kind of underclass, and that would be how people could see it as being derogatory. Now, the other term for Eskimo in raw meter would be a warrior, a hunter, a gatherer, something to be proud of. And that's how a lot of people view the term Eskimo. So it's interesting. How it all went down was Bel Air Direct back 5 years ago was a title sponsor for the organization. And they're the one who brought forward the pressure to change the name. They changed the name really quickly. The way they did it was quite hastily, in my opinion, Bubba. And here we are 5 years later, and Bel Air Direct's not even in the picture as a sponsor. So you changed it literally for nothing, and you've created so much backlash, because there's no denying there's backlash, and there are people who have essentially written the organization off. I don't believe that's right, but they have, because the Eskimo name and pride behind it was so deeply ingrained in people. The champions the championships that they've won. So I feel very honored to speak on it. And actually, this week, Bubba, there's a big reserve here down south of Edmonton. It's called Masquechese, and it's a combination of 4 different nations. And I'm on my 4th calendar year now, Bubba, in a row of putting on a football camp. And it goes yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So I'm in the midst of hosting a football camp for the First Nations community. And you know what? It's nothing but pride and proudness. And every time I say I'm not an Elk, I was an Eskimo, I literally get an applause, Bubba.
Appreciate your honesty there, my man. And it gives us a good understanding of sometimes the overreaction or the reaction of what we perceive to be the right thing. And sometimes, to me, it sounds like it was the wrong thing, but I'll leave that to other people. What else will continue on here is something that I think is very passionate to us. I'm very proud. You know, I never played in the Canadian Football League, but I'm a football guy, and I've been a broadcaster, and you know all about my history in the CFL. And I'm proud to call it our game, and I know you do as well too. And I've been kind of questioning, new TSN broadcaster Luke Wilson. And the guy had an unbelievable NFL career, and I love the fact that in some ways he's talking about some very hard decisions and discussions that we need to have about improving the Canadian game and moving it forward for the next generation. But I kind of like, and I don't like to pit media guy against media guy as we've done here, as I've just did. But Luke, to me, has gone a little too far, and he's actually hit the bone with Ticat fans as well too. Your thoughts? Because then we had Milt Stiegel a week ago, kind of just blowing up the league because that Robert Carter interception, it's one of the greatest plays I've ever seen in not only just CFL history, in football history. Just your thoughts on sort of where Luke has been in terms of his criticism of the league.
Yeah, so when it comes to Luke, the biggest thing, Luke reminds me of myself to a degree, especially back when I got fired from Ched for saying the hard truths. And some of the things that he's saying, Bubba, I can get behind, and I agree with. Some of the things, there are hard truths that the people in the league and around the league need to look at and question. The biggest issue that I take with him is his deliverance, his tone, the arrogant tones that are behind it, talking down to people. That doesn't need to happen. And then when you go out and you talk about the product itself being amateurish, I don't know how in earth a player would ever want to give him the time on a sideline. If I was playing and I heard some of these comments that he said throughout the first third of the season, I would call him out on the sideline. Bro, who are you? And then he goes and he talks about, well, he's been in the NFL, so it's like he's better, like he can speak on it. I've even seen him say that he's got more money than people. Those things, I don't got time for that. I don't care how much money you got. I don't care the fact that you played in the NFL. And I don't care the fact that I never did. And, quite honestly, Bubba, my dream, I wanted to try and get to the NFL, but my dream growing up was to be a Winnipeg Blue Bomber. And I don't think that I'm less than because I dreamed of being a CFL player just because he made it to the big show. And I've just seen some of these types of arrogant tones, like I say, where he's talking down to people. And to me, that's just not right. I'm a Canadian kid, just like Luke was. And man, Bubba, like I said, my dream was growing up being a Winnipeg Blue Bomber, going to games. I remember Friday night football, getting cheap tickets from Safeway, the grocery store, to sit in the family end zone section. That was the life that I grew up wanting. So I don't think that there's anything wrong with the CFL players wanting to be there. Yes, we can talk about the Canadian ratio, this and that. I think it's all hooey balooey. And this is a game that's been around for over 100 plus years. Let me remind people of that. A league that's been around longer than the NFL. No, it doesn't have the same money behind it. But these guys are laying their butts out on the line. They're professional athletes getting paid. No, they're not getting millions, but they're still getting paid a pretty good chunk of change for 5 months of work. And you can't disparage that product. Another issue that I have is we can talk about the negatives that he brings up and the issues that are surround the league and things that could be better. But what are you offering in terms of solution? At this point in my life, I've been around too many people in business. I don't have time to hear these negative complaints without you bringing a solution forward, or else it's all nullified. It's pointless to hear, and it's just you complaining.
I agree with you 100%, my man. And look, I know that we're in a social media world, and I guess clickbait is the word that we're hearing a lot of, and we're seeing a lot of social interaction, the most we've ever seen probably when it comes to someone talking about the Canadian Football League. And for that, I think there is a bit of a positive there for what Luke has done. But like you said, the tone and some of the things he says to me just kind of hit me the wrong way. For a guy that is Canadian and then was fortunate enough to get to what we would call the highest level in the National Football League. But that doesn't mean that you knock the CFL product.
Bubba, I constantly, sorry to cut you off, I constantly am hearing this. It's great because we're talking about the league. Yeah, we're talking about the league, but all we're doing is just talking about some negativity and a guy who's just kind of crapping on it. We're not talking about how to fix any of the issues that are brought up. We're just talking about it in one light. How about we talk about how to actually resolve and deal with some of these issues instead of it become the Luke Wilson show? And I don't want to I've spoken about him a few times this week, and I don't want it to be like I'm coming out for him, coming after him. I just want him to know, you can't be talking to people that way. You can't be disparaging people's dreams or their livelihoods because they're playing in the CFL and that's what they want, and it's not the NFL. I saw him get into it with Derek Dennis, and he brought up the money aspect, and I thought, man, who cares? You got to be mentally bigger in life than that to talk about money, because at the end of the day, man, there's some growing up that needs to be done if you're going to stand on that ground and think that that's a solid foundation.
Quick comment on the Robert Carter interception. It's the greatest interception I've ever seen, and as I said earlier, it may be the greatest play I've ever seen in football. Your thoughts?
That was a hell of a play, Bubba. And the fact that he's done that a couple of times, do you remember he was the one who did that in college a few years ago too? Like the angles of that's so hard to do. And it's like he had extra stickum on that glove, man, the way it just sucked in there and stuck. I couldn't believe it.
It really is. Like, look at it. Like, how does he do this? I don't that's one thing if you lean out. I always sort of think of the Deron Carter catch.
Yes.
I think of the S.J. Green. But this is, like, you're looking backwards. Look at that.
That's insane. Look at
really
that, man.
is.
That is insane. And if you're Bo Levi, you can't even be upset about that pick, man. The guy just went and made a play. You know what I mean? There's nothing you can do.
On our Ticats Audio Network broadcast, Simone kind of went off on O'Leary Orange for not going back and fighting for the ball. But I was like, dude, come on.
Players are going to make plays, man. That's as good as it gets. Like, we're talking about one of the best football catches in the history of the game now. We're not talking interception. That's one of the best football plays a person will ever see.
Well, we talk about as good as it gets, and this has been fabulous to have you on the Sportsline Podcast, Eddie. I think we got a great game coming up. I think the 1-5 Elks are going to give the Ticats a real good game. Who knows? It could be an upset if you want to call it that. But we're looking forward to these two teams getting on the field. And it's been great to have you talk about Canadian Football League and, of course, the Elks, Eskimos, and Ticats. Thanks for joining us, partner.
Thanks for having me, Bubba. I look forward to chatting with you down the road, man.
You know it. Take care, bud. Hey, that's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And as you just seen and heard, we love talking sports, and in particular, football. If you do know an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline Podcast, do want to hear from you. Please hit the thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, we always like and appreciate your comments. For the outstanding people that put the Sportsline Podcast together, thank you so very much, and we'll see you real soon.